Thank you. What a pleasure to be here. What a great topic, the end of school. Yay. I'm an evolutionary psychologist, and what that means is that I'm interested in human nature. I'm interested in how that nature came about by biological evolution, by natural selection. I'm particularly interested in the nature of human children, and most particularly in those aspects of children's nature that lead them to become educated. So the big idea that I'm here to talk about is this: that children are biologically designed to educate themselves. They do it joyfully through play, questioning, and exploration. We don't need to educate children. All we need to do is to provide the conditions that would allow them to educate themselves. The basic instincts of childhood, their playfulness, their curiosity, their willfulness, their sociability, have been honed by natural selection to serve the function of education. But we take those abilities away when we put them in school and prevent them from educating themselves. My argument is that if we provide the conditions that children need to educate themselves, we really can do away with schools as we know them. Now, some of you might be thinking that I'm crazy. Some of you, more kindly, might be thinking that I'm a hopeless idealist. But I assure you I am neither. I'm a hard-headed realist. I've done a great deal of research on this topic. The idea that I'm talking about today is supported by a great deal of empirical observation and research, which is elaborated upon in my book, but which here I have just a few minutes to try to convince you is worth thinking about. The first way I want to think about this idea is by looking at hunter-gatherer cultures. Now, we were all hunter-gatherers until relatively recently in history from a biological point of view. Some people in certain isolated parts of the world have survived as hunter-gatherers into modern times, and anthropologists have found them and studied their cultures. A few years ago, a graduate student of mine and I conducted a survey of 10 different anthropologists who had studied 7 different hunter-gatherer cultures among them on 3 different continents. We asked them questions about how children became educated in that culture. One of our questions was, how much time do children in the culture that you observed have to play and explore on their own? And the answer that we got from every single one of these anthropologists was all the time. The children and even the teenagers are free to play and explore in age-mixed groups away from adults all day long, every day, and in the process they become educated. Another question we asked was, how do they play? What are the forms of their play? And what we found from that, from these anthropologists, was that they play at the very activities that are hardest to learn and are most important to learn for success in their culture. So they play at hunting and gathering and finding roots and digging them up. They play at building things like huts and dugout canoes and bows and arrows and musical instruments. They play at the music and dance and art of their culture. They play at those things that they have to learn to become educated. The anthropologists also told us, and I've seen it in writing many times, that they have never seen brighter, happier, more resilient, more self-reliant children than the hunter-gatherer children that they observe. So the question is, could this work in our culture? At first glance, you might think, of course it can't. We're not hunter-gatherers. There are things that we have to learn that hunter-gatherer children don't have to learn, like reading, writing, and arithmetic. And moreover, it's not so easy for children in our culture to be exposed naturally to all the skills and knowledge that's important to the culture. So I might think that it wouldn't work, except for the fact that for many years now I've been an observer and researcher at the Sudbury Valley School in Framingham, Massachusetts. This school was founded in 1968, so it's now been in existence for almost half a century. It has about 150 students at any given time, age 4 on through about 18. It has about 8 staff members, adult staff members. It operates on a budget that's about half of what the local public schools cost, and it accepts essentially all students who apply. So this is not elite education. This is eminently affordable. Now, the unique things about this school are the way it is administered and the educational philosophy of the school. The school operates as a participatory democracy. All of the school rules are made by a school meeting at which each student and each staff member has one vote, and the rules are enforced at a judicial committee, by a judicial committee which is modeled after the jury system of our larger culture. At any given time, there's one little kid, one middle-sized kid, a couple of teenagers, and one staff member on the judicial committee, and if somebody, whether it's a staff member or a student, violates a rule at the school, they're brought up before the judicial committee, which makes a decision about guilt or innocence and a decision about what the punishment might be if found guilty. So that's the way the school operates. In terms of the educational philosophy, it's essentially the same as that of a hunter-gatherer band. The school offers no curriculum, no tests, no grades, no substitutes for grades. It expects children to decide themselves what they want to learn, how they want to learn, what they want to do. If you were to go through the school at any given time of day, you might see scenes such as on this slide. You would see children in the art room making various kinds of art projects. You might find somebody cooking in the kitchen. You would always find some people in the computer lab. You might find somebody in the photo lab. You might find children building with blocks in the children's playroom. Children playing music in one of the music practice rooms. Kids drawing playfully at a blackboard, young people maybe playing a game such as chess. Outdoors, you might find people playing down by the brook or climbing boulders or fishing in the pond or playing a game on the athletic field or strumming a guitar and talking and singing. In the winter, you might find people building a snowman or skating on that pond that they fished in the fall. You might also see them playing in more traditional playground ways. The key to learning at this school is age mixing. The children are not segregated by age. The older children are naturally drawn to the little kids, and the little kids are naturally drawn to the big kids. The little children observe what the older ones can do, and they want to do that. They want to be able to read if they see older ones read. They want to be able to climb trees if they see older ones climb trees. They also learn by interacting with the older ones. In age-mixed games, the older children are constantly scaffolding the behavior of the younger ones, bringing them up to higher levels of performance. So, for example, many children at this school learn to read because they play games that involve reading with kids who know how to read. And the kids who know how to read more or less teach them to read, not because they're trying to teach them to read, but because they almost need to do so to play the game. The advantage of age mixing also goes the other way. The older children are learning to care and be nurturant, to be leaders by helping the younger ones in this setting. And they're also being continuously inspired by the creativity and the energy of the younger ones. So the age mixing is as valuable for the older kids as for the younger ones. The best evidence that this school works comes from follow-up studies of the graduates. Quite a number of years ago, I, along with a colleague, David Chanoff, conducted one such study. We found essentially all of the people who had graduated from that school, almost all of them agreed to be in the study. And what we found was that they were doing very well out there in the world. They had no problems in higher education if they chose to go that way. And they were in a wide variety of careers. They were essentially, all of them, very satisfied with their lives. Many of them, and this is really interesting to me, many of them were pursuing careers that were direct extensions of passions and interests that they had developed in childhood play. So, for example, one of the graduates was a machinist and an inventor. He was somebody who loved to build things as a kid. There was another who loved boats, who was now the captain of a cruise ship. There was another who was fascinated by computers, loved computers, who had developed his own software company. There was another who loved making doll clothes, who is now a pattern maker in the high fashion industry. And I could go on with such examples. People who have time to really pursue what they like to play at could find ways of making a living at that. So on through the rest of their life, they were doing what they were really interested in doing. Since the time of my study, a couple of other studies of the school have been conducted by staff members of the school, Daniel Greenberg and Mimsy Sadovsky, and have been published as books. And they came to essentially the same conclusion as we did. The Sudbury model is replicable. More than 36 schools modeled after it exist, mostly in this country, some in other countries. That one of the closest to here is the closest to here is the Tallgrass Sudbury School in Riverside, Illinois. Success at these schools, as far as I have been able to tell, doesn't seem to depend on socio and economic class. It doesn't seem to depend on the particulars of the student's personality. Now here I want to describe the conditions that I think are common to a hunter-gatherer band in the Sudbury Valley School, and that really are the conditions that optimize children's abilities to educate themselves. So the first condition is a clear understanding that education is the child's responsibility. When children know that they're responsible for their education, they take that responsibility. When they believe, they're led to believe that somebody else is responsible for their education and all they have to do is do what they're told, then they tend to do that in the minimal way and they don't take responsibility for their education. Second condition, unlimited opportunity to play, explore, and pursue your own interests. Unlimited time, not an hour a day, not 2 hours a day, unlimited time. It takes time to try out different things. It takes time to get bored, to overcome boredom, to find your passion, and it takes time to really delve into your passion. It takes unlimited amount of time. You can't interrupt that with bells and telling people constantly what to do and expect people to really develop a passion. 3, opportunity to play with the tools of the culture, to really play with the tools of the culture. In a hunter-gatherer culture, those would be bows and arrows and knives and fire and digging sticks. In our culture, of course, the main tool is a computer. And it's not surprising that children everywhere in our culture love to play with computers. They know in their bones that this is the tool of the culture, and they need to spend a lot of time with it. So it becomes, in a sense, an extension of their own body. Access to a variety of caring adults who are helpers, not judges. How important that last part is. Helpers, not judges. The last person you want to go to help you learn something is somebody who's evaluating you. You're nervous about that person. That person is a person you go to in more of a frame of mind of trying to impress that person with how much you know, not to say, I really don't know this and I would like some help with this. So by not judging the children, the staff members are much more able to be helpers to the children than teachers in a typical school could be. Free age mixing among children and adolescents. I've already described that. That's absolutely key to the school. The school would not work if it were children all the same age, because children don't have much to learn from others who are the same age. They learn from children who are older and from children who are younger than themselves. 6, immersion in a stable, moral, democratic community. Both a hunter-gatherer band and the Sudbury Valley School are, in their own different ways, democratic communities. They're communities in which every child knows that their ideas and their actions influence the others involved in the community. So they're growing up in a setting where they feel responsible not just for themselves, but for the community within which they are developing. And that is an extraordinarily important aspect of education, and one which is almost completely ignored in our regular schools. Now, what I want you to notice is that none of these conditions exist in our standard schools, none of them. It's as if we deliberately take away from children everything that they need to educate themselves when we put them in school. And then we try very inefficiently and very ineffectively to educate them. So I'm going to conclude this way. I'm absolutely sure that someday people are going to look back at us now and they're going to say, what were those people thinking? Why on earth did they ever believe that coercion is essential for education? That's like believing you have to force people to eat or you have to force people to breathe. Why on earth did they ever think that standardization, such that people, regardless of their interests, regardless of their predilections, should all learn the same thing in the same way, be tested by the same tests? What kind of a crazy idea is that? I'm sure that we will reach the day where people will look back and say that. I hope we reach that day sooner rather than later. I would like to see it come in my lifetime. And I hope that some of you, maybe really all of you, I hope, will play a role in bringing that time about before too long. And with that, I thank you for your kind attention. I thank you for being here. And bless you all.
We're gonna have an awesome day today.
If you ask just about any SVS student what they're going to do today, chances are you're not going to get a very articulate answer. Maybe because they don't want to talk to you, but it's probably because they don't know. But if you ask them like what you're interested in, I mean, that's a whole different story. You'll probably get a very, very articulate answer. And a student not knowing exactly what they're going to do, but knowing what they like, just going to immerse themselves in whatever interest that they have, whatever activity.
It's a beautiful campus. It is soothing to come into. I feel like when you pull into the parking lot at school, it's just kind of escaping into our own little world where we can do whatever we want. We can do what we need to do without people interfering with that.
You see how many green cards we have?
I gave you all of mine.
We have like 20.
There's lots of different types of kids who come to Sudbury Valley School. Some have been here their whole lives. Some have just been here a couple of years. I spent 4 years at Sudbury Valley, and in my thesis, I split up those 4 years into a different section, because each one I had a uniquely different learning experience, and I had a higher order of thinking every successive year. In my first year, I really spent most of that year just playing video games. One particular video game, actually. A lot of parents and a lot of people who don't know the Sudbury model ask me, well, don't kids just play video games all day? And like, well, what if my kid just plays video games all day? And I mean, that's exactly what I did, and I certainly have no regrets. I did have a pretty close-knit group of friends who all shared the same exact interests as I did, and we were intensely involved in that community. I mean, it was just like anything else that you would be really intensely involved in. It just happened to be video games for us.
How do you control it? Here you go.
How will you ever survive their onslaught of death?
They're just evil bouncy balls.
Why?
Okay, I found a safe spot. Max, you gotta fix this glitch.
Yeah, well, in a couple minutes you'll be blown away by my programming prowess.
We studied those video games just like an economist would study the stock market. And I think anything that you put effort into, that type of effort into, would yield some growth in any manifestation.
A couple years ago at the picnic, I got together a 5-on-5 basketball game just because we had a lot of players here and it just seemed like a good idea. And after that was done, I realized I had a lot of fun. So when the school year started up, I just decided to start up my own basketball tournament.
Hey guys, there's 10 seconds left.
No one is forced to play. If you want to play, then we all have a great time. And there's little kids and there's big kids and there's medium-sized kids. We really try and make it as fair as possible. Athletics of the school take a big part in more than just my life. People are running around, playing tag, playing sports, throwing around the frisbee, swinging. I mean, when it's sunny and it's nice outside, you see people running around. And when it's raining outside and there's snow on the ground, we still play basketball at school.
Can someone make a video? Press the center button and start filming. What? Press what? Center button. Okay. Are you filming? Yeah. Alright, point at me. Hey.
There's escalator rock, there's either lunge rock, turtle rock, and there's another name for it, but I forget.
Staircase rock.
Justin, what are you doing?
Climbing.
You're getting up this way.
Yes, it's fun. Gives me a challenge. This is more challenging.
Yeah.
What? That? Yeah. I think it's possible. Well, everything's possible.
Yeah.
Before coming to Sudbury Valley School, I'd played guitar. It was a growing interest in the background. And then the summer after the first year, I spent some time at Berklee College of Music in a guitar program. And it was like I had used my ears for the first time. In my second year, I was spending lots more time rehearsing for the SVS music productions that we put on a couple of times a year, and I was focusing a lot on that stuff. And it shifted from that all video games to almost all music throughout that year, and that was my major focus.
I really like being able to focus on something that really takes my interest and having as much time as I want really to focus on it or not focus on it if I'm not interested.
Upside down. Good. And put something in there. Whatever color you want.
I'm gonna mix colors.
Can you mix it in here? Good.
They actually took away my art program at my old school, and I couldn't get through the day without art, and now I can do it all day, and I have the freedom to do it and to explore different mediums and explore different techniques. And I think that's really important in anything you do, to have that sort of freedom.
Let's stop there. I think it's good, Elizabeth. I think what I'm going to do is hook you and June together at this point, because I just wanted to make sure that you were solid with the song, that you're solid. And she knows the piano part.
Yeah.
So now the two of you will put together an awesome band.
Cool.
I mostly play classical music. This year I've been focusing on Debussy, Haydn, and now I'm working on a Chopin piece. The moment I've got most of it roughed in, but I'm just working on this new section that I haven't really looked at before. I love having the pianos here at school because I can play just about whenever I want. There's a second piano up in the barn, so if this one's busy, I've always got another one. So I can practice for 3 hours a day if I want to.
I mean, seriously, that monster is not big, but it's actually amazingly scary.
The thing that I like about making the movies is that I like when you're done and you get to watch it and say that you made that movie. The scene that I'm working on is about where the major gets taken captive by the humongous and is put in with all the other little kids that were taken by the humongous.
Well, it first started out as a box, obviously. Then we got some foam pieces. Aaron, what did we do to stick these on? Duct taped them on. And then we got expanding foam and then had it as a snow monster. And then we spray painted it for the spring monster.
Yesterday, when I was filming, I had 15 kids up here. And at times that was chaotic. We're 6 days into filming and we have 3 days left.
This is a fundraiser for the Music Corp. All the money that we're raising goes to the Music Corp to help buy instruments and supplies so we can play more music at the school.
I know. What? Pickle? I'm getting one meal, so yes, I am getting a pickle.
How much? No.
One. Does anyone here want an extra pickle? Take the pickle then. Yeah. I don't like pickles.
I love pickles.
I hate pickles.
I love them.
How do you hate pickles?
These pickles are awesome.
The Music Corp is a bunch of people who like music, so they have meetings and you can be a director, so you get to vote on stuff for the Music Corp and what they buy. And they have meetings whenever they want to decide something important that has to do with musical instruments or fundraising or something like that. The shows happen 4 times a year, and people start getting ready for them since like the last show. People start rehearsing and practicing and deciding what songs they want. I'm usually in the shows every year, and it's a lot of fun to be in them and see everybody, and usually the whole school goes to them.
My third year was a little bit of a contrast to the first two, in that in the first two I had like a hobby that I was doing all the time. I was always busy with that. And then my third year, I spent a lot more time in the sewing room, which is a particular room of Sudbury Valley School that sees like the most amount of traffic, the most amount of conversation. It's a very, very crazy place. And I spent a lot of time in there just conversing and observing and listening to all these types of things being talked about. My most critical thinking was done during that year. I spent a lot of time just writing essays because I had talked so much in the sewing room. We had so many both strange and intense conversations. There was a lot of things that I wanted to not forget. A lot of quotes from the day. And at first I was just like jotting them down, and then eventually I was writing full essays in an effort to not lose any of the stuff that I thought was productive. Well, towards the end of my third year, I came to a couple of conclusions, and I realized that while I absolutely love music, that I wouldn't make a career out of it. And I had sort of a intense, absolute passion for cognitive sciences and neuroscience, which came out of thinking about how we perceive music and how music is such a fundamental aspect of our cognitive processes. And more I decided that I was going to need to work up to a traditional college education to be able to go into this field. I call my fourth year like my adult year. I worked full-time job as a computer technician, but I also spent a lot of time formulating the plans and putting together what I would have to do, what I'd have to accomplish to be able to get accepted by a university. There's a quality about Sudbury Valley School kids that, whether they like it or not, they're absolutely unique. They have a really, really unique educational background.
The school gave me the gift of time to let my own interests rise to the surface. When you sit down to paint, you don't just sit and paint. You have to think about what you're doing and why. Any creative effort, perhaps any effort at all, requires a great deal of thought, even reading a book. You don't just read a book, you think about what you read, otherwise you're doing it for nothing. The school gave us the gift of time to relax, to have those things come to the surface that were there. It gave us time for reflection, for the introspection that you need to really develop your own creativity. I think that's a remarkable thing.
I'll call this school meeting to order. Everyone could please first turn off your cell phones and direct your attention to the results of previous school meetings. As the chairman of the school meeting, I am essentially the chief executive officer of the school, which means that I do a lot of things from signing staff contracts, and also I'm ex officio on a lot of the important committees, which means that I run a lot of them. I'm automatically, as chairman, a member of those. So things like managing the budget or dealing with staffing and admissions. I also run the weekly school meetings and kind of just help to manage the day-to-day school affairs. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. The school meeting is extremely important because it's basically what runs the school. Everything is decided in the school meeting. And, we've delegated to the JC to deal with judicial matters, and we've delegated to certain clerks and committees to deal with things. But ultimately, school meeting is the authority.
Everyone that comes to the school is a school meeting member. Everyone has an equal vote. And I feel like the community of the school really teaches kids that they're just as equal as any other person here. And I think that translates in the school meeting.
It doesn't matter if you're 4 or 16 or 75, everyone gets one vote. Everyone gets to talk, and we're all equals, and we make the decisions together by majority vote.
The world and the school is constantly changing and evolving, and we do modify rules every now and then. And sometimes when we change one, we'll realize that didn't quite work out, and we'll go back and amend it or fix it. And sometimes we realize there's new issues in the world that need tending to.
We think about everything, and we discuss everything, and we debate everything. And if we didn't have the structure that we have of having 2 motions, a well-run school meeting where everyone gets their voice heard, the decisions that we made would not be as good.
So at every school meeting, we have an agenda like this, and it has everything that we plan to discuss, every item of business.
Can we have a report from the clerks? Francis?
We have 5 finished, 0 new, and 0 work in progress.
So we are now discussing regular JC business, which usually takes about the bulk of school meeting. So the school meeting reviews all the reports and sentences and charges that the JC decided on. And sometimes they decide to change things, sometimes they don't. And we also deal with anything that has been referred to the school meeting. So that's usually more serious cases that the JC has decided they can't handle within their power.
And then we move on to second readings, which is motions that we'll be voting on that day, and then written agenda, which is motions that were just put in, so we kind of discuss those and throw them back and forth, and then we'll vote on them next week. And then there's open agenda, which, if there's an issue that wasn't in the written agenda, anybody can bring up, so you can say pretty much anything on the floor. And when that's over, we're adjourned.
It's exciting and it's interesting, but the reason that it's the most interesting to me is because I really care what's going on in school. I mean, a lot of people, when there's something going on in JC that they think is important, will go to JC, and the same thing with school meeting. And I think it's really, really great because I learned a lot from being JC clerk, and I am learning a lot from being school meeting chairman, and the whole process is one of the things that people benefit most from at this school. Is there any discussion of the results?
Yeah.
We'll ask her. I will get one. All right, we have Isabella. Stand over there. So Danny brought you up in the office yesterday. Isabella was screaming in the office and hall and screamed at me when I told her to calm down.
Oh.
What happened?
Okay. I was in the office talking.
The JC is a group of kids and staff from the school, and we deal with when people break rules. And basically how the JC works is that if you see someone breaking a rule or they do something to you that you don't like, you can write a complaint, and then the JC reviews them, investigates them, and figure out kind of what happened and whether they broke a rule or not.
It's kind of like jury duty in a way. You're chosen, you've got to show up on your day, 11 o'clock, you got to stay there through the whole thing. You get a vote, you get to sit there. And we have a staff that joins us, and together we all decide. We all make the decision, we all make the choice of what the people are going to get as their charge, as their sentence, and it all works out.
All in favor? All opposed, report
Motion passes. All right, want to call Sam in here?
The way they made that is just, I think, genius. I mean, you get all kinds of perspectives from a little kid that might see only certain parts of the problem, all the way up to a staff member who might see beyond the problem, or someone my age who might even understand my reasoning more so than other people. I mean, the best part about it is that it's not just a kid my age just saying, look, he's my friend, so I'm going to let him off. I mean, it's all these ideas coming together and making a final judgment.
We have a lot of different rules, and most of them are basically common sense. But one of the biggest ones and one of the first ones we made was called infringement, which is basically that everyone has a right to, go about their day peacefully and be able to pursue what they want to pursue without people harassing them or being mean to them. So it's basically that you can't do anything to anybody that they don't want you to do.
It's very nice to have this feeling in the community that if someone is bugging you or doing something you don't like, that you don't have to put up with it or you don't need to get an adult. You can say, stop or I'll bring you up.
Well, when somebody writes a complaint, there's a line and they write witnesses. And so before we even call anybody in, the complainant, who's the person who wrote the complaint, or the person that they're writing the complaint against, we sort of talk about it as a JC and decide whether we want to talk to the person who wrote the complaint first, or maybe get one of the witnesses, sort of like, a bystander that wasn't really involved, especially if it's a complaint which, might be, well, so-and-so did this to me, but maybe he was provoked and the complaint doesn't say that. And you get to hear it from all sides and figure out really what happened from everybody, not just the people who were involved.
And from that, you'll write a report that goes with the testimony. You could write in it what people specifically said, what they didn't.
Back in public high school, you do something, and even if the principal might feel like you didn't necessarily do such a bad thing, sometimes he would stick to the rule book and even give you a really bad, weekend of coming to school or something like that, when you were just like 5 minutes late to class or something. Here, for example, if you break a rule, even though there's no rule like that, you get to voice your opinion, and whoever wrote the complaint gets to voice their opinion. They get to actually come to a fair conclusion. I mean, you might have still broken a rule, so you will get a punishment, but it might not be as severe. It might not be, a strict, already set out rule book for that. So, I mean, that's just the best thing you could really ever ask for, I think, for being a person my age or even a little kid, So I definitely love that part about school, and I respect it a lot.
I think there's definitely a satisfaction in, for me, working towards what truth is, how you're going to get at it, how you're going to figure it out. And once you're done with it, it's an awesome feeling.
I think that the school's really cool, and I think it's really cool how people are allowed to have a say in stuff. Because the person who got brought up and the person who wrote the complaint, they both get to say what happened, and then they get to agree if they think that's fair or not.
I think one of the keys is that it's a government by the peers. And I think that's one of the things that really hits home with people. It's your friends and the people that you see every day and want to spend time with who are saying, hey, don't do that, I like you, but you really can't do that here. and you can't do it in your life.
Hey, Nell, could you stand over there behind David? Thanks. There was a Hershey's candy bar wrapper littered yesterday with the initials ED.
Okay.
Do you ever get things initialed ED, or is it always ND?
We are very clear about our procedures, and everyone knows them from the minute they come into the JC for the first time. It's explained to them, younger kids and older kids, and you know, a 6-year-old is going to understand how to deal with something on a procedural level. You know, they say this is how it's done, and this is the procedure, and this is what order everything's going to happen in, and they understand both, you know, in the JC and in the school meeting. And if they're going to go into something like that in life after leaving school, or while they're still at school, they're really going to understand that there is a procedure and that they have to follow it and how to follow it. It's explained to them.
I think one of the things that sums it up is one of our most important rules is preamble, which says that all school meeting members are responsible for protecting the atmosphere of the school, which is of freedom and trust and fairness and order. That is just how we exist in school. We have a lot of rules, we really do, but all the rules are there to make sure that everyone can exist freely